Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting in person here in City Council chambers, as well as virtually using Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions, and Mayor Joyner will begin the meeting momentarily.
I forgot. Yeah. So, I apologize.
Do you want to do it?
Sure, I'll do it, yeah.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and have
Okay.
Councilmember Andreotta lead us in the
All right,
invocation.
thank you, Mayor. Let's pray. Lord, we just thank you for this evening. We thank you for the last couple days of sunshine. Thank you for the chance for things to dry out. Lord, we ask for your presence to be here, to give us wisdom as we make choices for the city. God, that you will just be in our presence, and Lord, that we just have wisdom and discernment and to do your will. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Go ahead, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta,
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here.
and Mayor Joyner.
With that, we move on to item 3, report from closed session. Christine, I don't believe we have anything to report out.
Correct, Mayor. No reportable action.
All right, on to the Pledge of Allegiance. And Anita, since the majority of this agenda comes from your shop, why don't you go ahead and do this?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will also point out, however, that you jinxed us for tonight and predicted we'd go late.
You're not allowed to say that.
All right, agenda modifications. Are there any adjustments? Requests for the agenda?
Nope.
Staff? Council? None? We'll move on to item 6, presentation for fiscal year 2022 audit.
Good evening, Nita Racker, Finance Director for the city, and it is my privilege to present Justin Williams, who will be giving this year's fiscal audit report for the fiscal year just ended of June 30th, 2022. Justin?
Thank you, Nita. Okay, so I see the PowerPoint up there. Do you want me to share my screen and advance it, or will somebody just advance this?
We can just use this one and just say, please say next slide.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right. And as Nita mentioned, I'm here to present the audit results for the year ended June 30th, 2022. Next slide. One thing I'd like to remind members of council, members of management, the financial statements themselves are the responsibility of management. And the purpose of a financial statement audit is for the auditor to come in and form an independent opinion on those financial statements to let the reader know whether or not they're fairly stated. Next slide. A little bit about our audit process. We break our field work up into 2 different parts. So this is when we're physically on site at the city's offices. We're out there in June doing the interim field work phase. The different types of procedures we do out there, we do a lot of planning ahead of time where we're reviewing council minutes. We have meetings with management. And another big part of that is we look at the financial processes and internal controls that the city has in place. So I have listed the 4 main areas that we look at: the cash receipts, disbursements, payroll and HR process, financial reporting. And then also during this time, if we had any prior year findings or recommendations, we'll review those to make sure those have been implemented during this phase. Next. Year-end field work. This is once the books are closed, audit schedules are prepared. We select a lot of different samples for a lot of different areas. Once all that information is ready for us, we come back out for this phase of the audit. And this was in last week of October. A pretty typical time frame for a June 30th year end. We do testing of year-end balances and activity during this part of the audit. I listed some examples of the different types of tests that we do. As an auditor, we send confirmation of balances out. They're sent directly to financial institution. It's a really strong audit test that we do to obtain third-party verification of balances. We do cutoff testing where we're looking at transactions on different sides of your year end at that June 30th timeframe. Also perform detailed tests of transactions where we're looking at source documents to make sure that they agree to the details in the accounting system and financial reports. Also do analytical review where we're looking at different ratios, different variances and transactions from year to year, make sure that they make sense with our expectations. Another big part of the audit is the single audit, which is audit of the federal grants. And then we also work on the preparation of the financial statements. Next slide. So the financial statements themselves for the City of Lincoln is called the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And so it consists of 3 different sections: the introductory section, which has the basic information on the city, as well as the transmittal letter, which is prepared by management. The financial section, this is really the only required section under the state of California and other statutes that the city has to present. The other portions are elective by the city just to provide additional information to the users. So the financial section, that's where our audit report goes. The management's discussion and analysis, which is prepared by management, the financial statements and notes themselves. And then in the back of that is the statistical section, which I mentioned is optional information that provides additional financial, economic, and demographic information for the users. Next slide. So to report the results of the audit, we issue 5 different reports or letters. Our audit opinion, government audit standards report, our single audit report, which is the federal report, and then 2 separate letters to let council know ultimately the results of the audit. So I'll quickly talk about each of these. Next slide, please. Independent auditors report, this is our main report. This is our opinion on the financial statements themselves that tells the user of the financials whether or not the numbers included in there are fairly stated. And there's 4 different types of opinions that an auditor can provide. What we have here is an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. So that's good news. No material misstatements were noted in the presentation of the financials. So definitely good news there. Next slide, please. The next report that we issue is our government audit standards report. And the main thing to know about this one is if we identify any findings or major issues with your internal controls or compliance exceptions, they get reported in this government audit standards letter. And I just wanted to show this quick little chart here so you can see the improvements that the city has made over the years. When we first did the audit in 2018, we had 2 material weaknesses, we had 4 significant deficiencies and 3 compliance exceptions. And then as you can see each year, all these things were approved by the finance department. So things have definitely improved dramatically in the last couple of years. Next slide. All right, I mentioned earlier that the single audit report, any organization in the United States that receives more than $750,000 in federal funds has to get this additional audit. Now, it's more like a compliance type audit to make sure that the funds are being spent in accordance with the grant. Here we had 2 different major programs that were audited, the Home Investment Partnership Program and then the coronavirus relief funds as well. Had unmodified or clean opinion on those. No material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or compliance exceptions related to this federal funding. So again, that's very good news. Next slide. So in addition to our audit opinions, we're also required to communicate certain things to council or those charged with governance. We're required to let you know if there are any new accounting policies implemented during the current year. GASB 87 was implemented this year, which effectively put all leases on the statement of net assets or on your balance sheet. This is a new requirement in the current year. Also required to let you know whether or not which estimates are included in your financials. All financial statements are going to have some sort of estimate, and there's a list of the estimates that are included in the city's financials. Nothing unusual there at all. We're just required to let you know what those estimates are. And that's just by the nature of these accounts that they're considered to be an estimate. Next slide. Continuing with that conclusion letter, we're also would let you know if we had any difficulties encountered performing the audit, things that maybe wouldn't affect our ultimate findings or ultimate opinion, but if there were significant delays in the audit, we would let you know here. And as you can see, there were none. Audit adjustments, we're required to let you know if there were any audit adjustments. We had 8 this year, a couple more than last year, but these 8 were the increase was mainly due to implementation of GASB 87. And so in this case, these audit adjustments are really more at the financial statement level, more accounting entries that are done at a high level at year end. And you can see there, I included in 2018, which was that first year that we had where we had the material weaknesses and issues with the internal controls. We had over 50 audit adjustments, and audit adjustments mean once we're presented with your books to audit, any number changes or adjustments that we recommend are considered to be an audit adjustment. So again, overall improvement in that year over year. Then just one immaterial adjustment we're required to let you know, but it was a small number. Next. So in addition to, I mentioned earlier, if we have major issues or issues with your internal controls that are considered to be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, those are reported in that government audit standards report. If we have other general recommendations for your controls that don't rise to the level of a material weakness or significant deficiency, we include them in this particular management letter. And we just had 3 of those this year. We're almost always going to have a few of these. We're constantly trying to make recommendations on how to improve things or make things more efficient. So we did have the three of those this year. Next slide. Last year, we did have, so this is these are the items that we had on the management letter in the prior year. And as you can see, 3 out of 4 were implemented. And that interfund advance is one that's a repeat this year. That's in process of being implemented. And I would think that one will probably go away next year. Next slide. So in summary, very good audit results here. We had an unmodified opinion on the financials, meaning a clean opinion, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies or compliance exceptions. Had the 3 items noted for improvement on the management letter. The audit this year for the 2nd year in a row was filed timely. And by that, for the ACFR, for the annual comprehensive financial report, that's required to be filed by 12/31, and that was done. And again, I mentioned that earlier, but there have been significant improvements in the overall processes and controls since we first did the city's audit back in 2018. And next slide, just the questions. But before I wrap up, I would like to thank Nita, the rest of the finance team. We look at a whole lot of documents and request a lot of different samples and look at a lot of different areas. So it really says a lot about the quality of the finance team that you have there to ultimately end up with great audit results like this. So thank you very much, Nita, for you and your staff help and going through this audit and ending up with great audit results like this.
Thanks, Justin. The only thing I would add is that this presentation and the audit report was presented to PIOC, the Financial and Investment Oversight Committee for the city. And they did have a very good discussion with Justin regarding the recommendations in the management letter and the audit in general. So at this point, there's no action needed. It's just an acceptance of this report.
Any questions from the council?
No questions, just a comment. How far we have come. I say all the time, this isn't the same place it was when I stepped on the council in 2018. And that is because of the really hard work that staff that was already here and staff has come. And so thank you to all of you for all your hard work, for digging deep, for turning things around. And it is such a pleasure to have a clean audit, nothing to worry about really. And I know that the one little thing that we still working on, it'll be done soon. And so thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I'm saying it's always good to have a clean audit. I'm an accountant, so.
Yeah, thank you. Sandra Cook led the audit audit efforts this year and last year. And I think that those, the no findings and the no changes and the no adjustments really shows in the quality of her work and the dedication that she has to the city.
It also shows commitment by the city in supporting your staff. As someone that has religiously followed our financials for about 20 years, I can remember the day when the list of deficiencies, serious deficiencies, and oh my gods, where the numbers were up in the 50s and the 60s. Books not audited for 5 years. They completed 5 audits in 1 year. Where we are now is a generation and a world away from where we were when I first started looking at it. And there's a lot of very hard work and commitment and management skill that goes into making this type of audit. Thank you very much, Nita. Thank you, staff.
Yeah, and I'll echo the same. When I first came on the council, I was pulled aside by the then city manager at about the 6-month mark. And he said, no, I'm not sure. He was fairly new as well. He'd only come on board 6 months before me. I'm not sure, but I think that the city of Lincoln has not closed nor audited their books in 3 years. That was the beginning of the recession. And so the pressures that came on to this city, both to flatten the organization and survive the recession and somehow be able to clear up. I don't recall it was 5 years, but it was 3 years worth of book closing and audits in a very short period of time. I think they got it done in 1.5 years. It was remarkable. This goes so far beyond that. What your staff, your team has done, I think really makes this council finally feel as though we have a rock solid finance department that we can trust, that we can be proud of. And I personally cannot thank you enough, but also on behalf of all the citizens of Lincoln, thank you, thank your team for the incredibly good work that you've done. Please keep it up. We're really proud of you. I want to open it up to the public. If anybody there wants to comment on this item. Look like it. Right. Thank you, Nita.
Thank you.
Oh, true. Anybody on Zoom?
Can I just say that I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants?
I'm sorry, Beth. That's- All right, we move on to item 6B, certificates of appreciation for outgoing committee members. Before we jump into this, I kind of want to give a little introduction to this. We have been remiss as a council, and part of that was COVID. Part of that was, I think we just get so busy in what we do here that we didn't think of it. But this council is advised by a great many citizen committees with volunteers from the community who put in their time for free, who share their wisdom, their experience, their time to help guide this city and make it a better place to live and work and help us do our jobs all that much better. What happens after an election is that some of those people have their terms up, they rotate out, and we have not been very good at recognizing those folks. So I wanted to create the opportunity for us to take a few minutes tonight, and for those who are willing to come in tonight, show that appreciation, share some certificates with them that our city clerk was good enough to create for us. And so I think we're just going to wing it from over here. If you've got a microphone for me.
Sorry, we don't have, so we have Bill.
All right, it looks like we have 3 folks who've shown up tonight. So Bill, why don't we start with you, Bill Lyons? That looks pretty good, Bill. What do you think?
Better than I expected.
So I do want to say this about Bill. You've been on the Planning Commission for
12 years.
12 years. Bill started his relationship with the city of Lincoln with the bullhorn in his hand, Channel 3 on the curb, and angry. We worked through those challenges. We brought Bill on board. He is a data scientist by profession, and he has brought those analytical skills to the Planning Commission for all these years, and he will be missed. So Bill, thank you for your service. Thank you for all you've done to the community. Andy Sist. Andy has been a member of our FIOC committee, and I really wish I could twist his arm into staying. Doesn't sound like I can. Andy is the county auditor. And so having him as part of our FIOC, our Finance and Investment Committee, has been invaluable as well, to have his eyes, profession, and actually distance, professional distance, to be able to take a look at what we're doing here in the city and help us steer to the right track. And you heard tonight from those clean findings that we're doing a hell of a lot better than prior to your being on the FIOC committee. So thank you so much, Andy, for your service. I hope we continue to see you around. Congratulations. All right. And last one is Tim Malin. Kim, I don't know your background very well. I apologize for that. Did you want to share with us a little bit about your background and your time and experience on the library committee?
Sure. Yeah, I just moved to Lincoln in 2009, and shortly after that joined on library and Park and Rec. So been on there for quite some time, and have a big family, and we sure enjoy the parks and everything about Lincoln. And so thought it was a good fit to be on the committee. But
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for your, looks like we got this little ski wonky there. Is this magnets, Gwen? Oh, okay. So don't touch the magnets.
Okay, great.
Truly appreciate your commitment to our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For the others, we'll go ahead and set. Yes, thank you. Another big round of applause, if you would, for all those who have served on our committees. Wayne, do you have a list of the others? Maybe we could go ahead and read them out loud.
Leslie's going to read them off. Here we go. So we have Linda Lobinger, who was on our FIOC committee. Planning Commissioner Dan Cross and Tony Manning. And our airport committee, Brian Liebunguth. And then downstairs, we all have plaques for Dennis Clear, who is our Park and Recreation Chair, and Janet Voris, who also was on our Park and Recreation Committee, and John Fett, who was the Chair of our Economic Development Committee.
Their commitment to our community is very much appreciated. Any members of the council wish to speak?
No, just want to echo your thanks. These individuals have served for quite some time, have done a lot of good work, and we really appreciate their dedication and their care for the city. And on all these committees, they're very valued and trusted, and we just appreciate their service.
Very good, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to item 6C, flash vote. Jen?
Good evening, council and mayor. My name is Jennifer Brown. I'm the CITO for the city, and I have a exciting new survey tool that we're in the process of launching right now, that we wanted to give you a background on all of its abilities of what it could do and the power of it and how it will help us make better planned decisions based on what our community really wants. So I have Kevin Lyons on the line.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can, Kevin.
Excellent.
And he'll be sharing a presentation.
Is that hum on Kevin's end? Not anymore.
Let's see. You getting any hum on my end still?
We're good.
We're good. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for having me stop into your meeting. And I am Kevin Lyons. I'm a co-founder and chief scientist of FlashVote. So I am the chief editor of the surveys that we're going to be doing with you. We're very excited to work with you on really getting the data you need for good decisions. So what I have is a little presentation to give you a sense of the challenge and how we overcome that. And then happy to take, of course, questions, ideas, anything you have. That's why I'm here live for you. Ready to roll?
Ready?
All right, we'll keep it a little fun and interactive too. That's a style we like to do because we're in the feedback business. So start out with a little question for you guys. How often do you think public input sentiment you get from people online, offline, phone calls, emails, social media, all that stuff is a good match for what the whole community thinks? Anyone want to take a wild guess? We're not grading you or anything. It's for fun.
Well, you left one out, the grocery store.
Yeah, well, that's a good
That one is
too.
pretty accurate, I'll tell you.
Getting
Aisle to
hounded in the
aisle,
grocery
the
store.
input can change. Anyone else
Yes.
want to?
I think generally when we do surveys or get public input, it's a very small percentage of the whole town.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
been my experience. I don't know if it's correct or not.
Generally going to be that, yeah. Feel free to throw out a percentage if anyone wants to have some fun with this
I
one. and then we
remember
can-
reading this somewhere in some of your materials. Was it
Uh-oh,
7%?
uh-oh.
I
Or
What'd you
was
say?
it lower?
I was gonna say like 3%.
3%, there's our number, 3%.
Yeah, I remember reading it.
Ooh.
All right, so we actually went and looked at our first 300 scientific surveys and compared that to the data that you had from all these sources, including grocery stores, the beliefs that people had, and it's about 5%, which, by the way, is statistically indistinguishable from 3% in this case. So you nailed it. In fact, your guesses are pretty good. A lot of elected officials start at a much higher number. Maybe that's why we're working with you. So that's awesome. What's interesting, and there's also about 25% where that sentiment is exaggerating a small group to feel larger, but not to be dominant. And then about 70% of the time, we found that the sentiment, the beliefs, were actually the opposite of what the public actually wanted. So that's a big challenge. And just to make it a little more tangible, here's a little case study we were part of at a Harvard JFK school, and people had meetings like they should. They had grad students there tracking what people wanted for a community center, health and social services, study meeting, event space were the two things over 51%, 50%. And then they also did an online survey because they weren't just going to have a meeting. They wanted to make it easier to get outreach get input from people. So that had very different demographics, younger, more women. Meeting was older, more men, but the data, the results matched up. Interesting thing though, given what we just talked about, we did a scientific survey and look what happened. So it wasn't necessarily demographics. It turns out that the self-selection by the people most interested, that small percentage we're talking about, is what kills the data and makes it misleading. And that's what led to their conclusion, traditional methods of community input are biased. But you don't have to worry about that anymore because we've got FlashVote now. So just to review the core problem that we are solving for you by getting representative input is who you're going to hear from in your community most of the time. Who's that percentage going to be? If you had to guess.
It's going to be the people who are angry with what we're doing.
Yeah, it is the
If you're
haters.
Please, they're
number
probably
one.
not going to show up.
That's a shame, right? Hey,
Yep.
I just, if someone comes up and says, hey, I just want to let you know I drove here and you guys are doing a great job. I'm going home. It'd be nice. Sometimes you
once,
do
that
get
would be
people just once. It would be, let me know because I will share that with everyone else. The people that are really fond of a project also will show up sometimes. That's why we have them in the dash line. But what's challenging about when the haters show up, and I've experienced this firsthand, do a once a month meeting as a county advisory board member, as a public official, is that it feels like it's everyone. If they dominate a meeting, dominate a forum online or otherwise. But it can always be this. It can always be that that's just the outliers. The haters are the tip, not the tip of the iceberg. They're the only part of the iceberg. It's not even an iceberg. And so problem is, obviously we have a challenge with the emotional response that I don't like getting yelled at. I don't know about you guys. But if you have data in the room, if you can hear from the many, you can overcome that, have defensible data, defensible decisions, and move that. So hopefully that gets you excited. Flash vote is your way to get statistically valid community input in 48 hours throughout the year on important decisions. We work with the staff to come up with the questions. And the technique is actually advanced. It's not just traditional scientific surveys, which nowadays have some challenges. We created our first survey panel in 2013, actually in Northern Nevada, Northern California, near you. And what that means is what we're going to do next is invite people to join. Hey, do you have 1 minute a month to help make Lincoln better? It's a very generic left brain, right brain. We're going to do it through multiple channels. People can participate by text, email, or phone call if they prefer. We make it easy for them to sign up, capture some demographics as part of the process that then are built into every survey, and also secure it. It's a one person, one vote scientific system. And this can include addresses. So about 90% of people will give us an address. You'll even be able to see what part of town or what district or service area that people are in. Helps you get a good sense of whether you're doing equitable treatment on needs, wants, priorities across the board. And we do work with you to come up with the questions. You still get the professionally designed questions as well. So you have a topic, an issue, a challenge. We can work with you on that, tailored to resident knowledge, run it through our 23-point quality control, and really make it readable and dialed into what people know that we don't, you don't on the outside. And once that survey is done and launched, all the work is done. We send it out, collect all the data from residents, and calculate the results. And when I say that you've got a tool that's state of the art here, we were a year ahead of Pew Research, one of the national firms. And in their case, 4 years later, it was most of their data, actually. They had switched completely from traditional surveys to panels. And now we're in about almost 30 states now. And we're delighted to work with you guys. So any questions or topics you might want to see?
I'll open it up to council. Any questions or topics? If not, I've got one.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Mayor. No, go ahead.
Well, you're winning me over here, Kevin. I was concerned when we first started taking a look at this was going to lead to some type of finger in the wind governance. But it appears to be very valid, broad data upon which to base decisions. My question would be, if we're having solely folks sign up, how do we avoid that same interest-based issue that we were talking about with the people coming in who have a negative opinion or a positive opinion?
Yeah,
If we're simply asking people to sign up, how do we keep that a broad base across all sectors?
It's a great question. So a couple of things that we do there. One is we do look at the demographics themselves in the panel, and we use our own database to supplement based on what we see after this initial invitation push. But second is we don't know what the topics are that are coming up, and you might not either. And so no one does. And so what we're really selecting for, there's always no data, no sample's perfect. So what we're selecting for is people that give a tiny little bit of something about the community. And that's it. not that they're, hey, make sure you sign up to take the recycling survey or the whatever survey. And so by doing that, we found that really minimizes it. And the other key part of that is the really high response rate. So within that panel, we'd expect to see a 50 to 70% response rate, 40 to 80% is the kind of the broader range, but it doesn't spike up or down on a particular topic, which is a sign that you do have that self-selection. So hopefully that addresses that
What do
question.
you mean when you say you use your own database?
So we do have access to the fanciest political database in the country that everyone is in, and there's contact info, not just addresses, but also cell phone numbers and things like that that are built in for us to use to help equitably balance the panel.
So you augment your outreach, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so we definitely use your existing channels that the staff has built up, but then we augment that outreach in general by looking at the demographics. And typically you'll see more women than men, for example, more older than younger. And so those are some of the adjustments what we might try to make around the edges.
Okay, thank you. Holly?
Yeah, you bet.
I don't know if I have a real question. I mean, this is very intriguing. And so we're just looking at it to see if we're interested in it, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
just
yeah.
a presentation.
I actually think that this would be very helpful because we've gone out for public input before and we got like, a very small percentage. It always seemed it was a little skewed. So I'm very interested in having something more scientific and more stable.
And to be clear, we didn't mention this at the beginning, but it's not a very expensive subscription. So we actually, staff had authority. We've already signed up for this as part of our
Okay, cool.
transparency exercise. So hopefully you like it.
That's awesome. Well, I was wondering, have we already procured
take
it
a
or
poll on
are
whether to
you
do
asking for
You
direction?
probably should have started.
More of a
with
pep
that.
Yeah, we
talk.
probably should have let you know that. But what we really wanted to do, we took it in terms of city council talks pretty much regularly about transparency and trying to find new ways to communicate and get information that actually is useful. And Placer County uses this tool, Roseville uses this tool, many, many cities use it. And all of the references we received were super positive about how useful it is. So
Well, I appreciate your initiative
sorry
and
about
just
that.
doing it. Yeah, that's great.
Kevin, I have one question.
Sure.
We have a population of 50,000. What is your sample-based need to hit a 95%? I don't think people understand
Yeah, sure.
statistics. So
Yeah, no, if more people did, I wouldn't have a job maybe, so that's okay. But so you're asking about the 95% confidence level to what kind of numbers do we need as a sample size? So yeah, there's different, you can adjust it up or down, but basically 95% confidence level is the standard confidence level for sampling. So you can imagine that what that's saying is 19 out of 20 times that you take a sample of people, you will get the result within a certain margin of error, you probably heard, plus or minus 5% of the true population. If you could somehow magically ask everyone what they thought, or look at all the M&M colors in a bag, for example, if you're trying to figure out how many are green. And so the answer for that is 384 is the number. And what's weird about that is it doesn't matter whether you're 50,000 or 50 million or really even 5,000, unfortunately. If you get smaller, you still need that 384 for that result. So we always like to see 200 to 600 responses, which is plus or minus 7% to plus or minus 4%. That's all good data. And the larger you have, the better your subsamples are. So, male versus female or some other subsamples could be very useful. Does that cover that for you?
that was clear. That's what I wanted, actually, was a 384. You're still in Placer County?
Yeah, so, and that's why you guys actually come into the game with already over 500 people signed up before we even really begin the big
Right.
invitation push.
Yeah, I've been using FlashVote for 3 years now for county stuff. So anyway,
What do you think of it?
is horrible.
Good. That's
No,
how we
it-
make
it
it better.
doesn't.
We use that
It,
feedback.
it doesn't take any time. It's simple and I like it. I mean, but really looking forward because it is compared to other valid, statistically valid survey sources. It's really cheap, which means we can do more surveys to get more input from the community than we could if we were going to a normal, not normal, that's bad terminology, but if we went to the companies that I used to use to do these kinds of surveys, it's very expensive to do a single survey. So you did one only when you really, really, really needed to do it. So with this, I think the number I heard is we're over 600 already with just the pre-signed up people and the few people that have responded to the limited, very limited outreach that we've done. So.
So I
anyway,
think your last ask of us, Kevin, was whether we had any thoughts about questions that we might be polling on or topics.
Yeah, topics, just, you can start thinking about it and work with staff
Yeah.
on that, of course. Yeah.
I would think that would come out. I would think that would come out during their strategic.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah.
All right. Very
Cool.
good. Kevin, thank you so much for that. I think I'm going to open it up to the public real quick in case there are any questions from them on this topic. Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and all those here that are present. Pulling data more and more, asking people their opinions. I may be slow coming up to the water trough. For years, I didn't realize that when you sign up for a particular, whatever it is, you put your name in for whatever, and then hopefully you might win something. What I didn't know for a long period of time is that really wasn't what they were giving away. What they were doing was selling lists, and that's big business. It has become major business. So my question is, the data and the information what's the confidence level for the person that's sitting down filling out that? Where does that data not go, but what is that data then used for? Who or what can then pull that data and that information and then use it for their use? So how secure is that? Or in today's market, that's a kind of a big issue. So that's my question.
That's a great question. Kevin?
Terrific question. Yeah, thanks for that question. So two aspects of that I heard. One is what's done with the data, and as we have when you sign up is full privacy, no spam. We don't share your information with anyone. That includes the city government and anyone else. And that's kind of the first thing. That data is yours. We keep it private. Everything is anonymously reported. So you don't have to worry about that as a user. And then the second part of that, I think, was like kind of the security. And even though we don't capture what you'd call high value data from you, we kind of ask for the minimum fields required. So for example, we don't ask for a birth date. We just want a year of birth, which is good enough for our purposes, simpler for you. We secure it. We use encrypted transmission, and we actually encrypt our data as well at rest. So what that means is that it's scrambled zeros and ones on a drive if anyone were to break into that somehow, but we also have many security layers on top of that, including two-factor authentication and other things that are very effective. So great question.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Thank you again, Kevin. Much appreciated. We look forward to working with you. We're going to go ahead and move on to item 6D, community development update. Kristen, I've kept you waiting long enough.
Christian Svensk, Community Development Director, City of Lincoln. Happy to be here tonight on my inaugural presentation to you guys. The purpose of this presentation is just to simply provide you with an update on the state of the Community Development Department, where we've been, and most importantly, where we're going in 2023. This may also help serve as a primer for the strategic goal setting exercise that council will be working on, especially specifically as it relates to team cohesion. So I have a few thoughts on team cohesion, though perhaps maybe one of the softer strategic priorities in a way. It is the building block of CDD, in that we're both customer serving as well as regulatory. So obviously this is a fine line to walk. CDD reviews projects for consistency with planning, building, and engineering standards, as well as trying to serve the customer and implement community-wide goals for overall quality of life. So in doing so, we navigate a wide array of external relationships, from private residents seeking to remodel their home to large-scale developers who've been doing business in the city for many years, not to mention the many, many partners who we do business with as well. So in this context, having a supportive, cohesive team is absolutely critical to serving this web of relationships. Lastly, team cohesion is particularly germane to CDD because we are a relatively small department of 18 people, but we do have 4 distinct disciplines within it: planning, development, engineering, building, and not least admin. So admin is critical to CDD in that we generate tons and tons of data. We also aggregate fees from disparate sources into our building permits, and then we have the distinct pleasure of delivering these fees to our customers. So cross communication is critical, and to me, that's what is bringing our team together. So a quick overview, we're going to touch on just what I spoke to: the CDD transition, how we staffed up, our current org chart, our priorities internal, and as they relate to our external priorities. So this is where we're at now. Within the last year, we've had 9 new employees, which is 50% of the entire department. More acutely, within the last 6 months, we've had pretty much eight of those employees start within the last six months, me included. So I am at about my 6-month period here. So, and just for more perspective, we only have 3 CDD employees who have been over 3 years with the city. So that serves as a further explanation of where we've come from. As we are now, we have 2 vacancies. We're still using 3 consultants. We have a couple of tweaks to do to fill. We've greatly reduced our reliance on consultants, specifically in development engineering. We are going to reclassify a second senior planner position to that of an assistant planner position. This will give us a fully actualized planning division in the sense that we'll have 4 sequential positions: manager, senior, associate, assistant, and that way people can kind of see the ladder of progression in their career as well. The other vacancy is in building. It's an inspector position. We're working on reclassifying that to a plan checker position. Again, this would further reduce our reliance on outside consultants who do a lot of our plan checks. So with these positions filled, in October, we made it through the end of the year submittal rush. The fees were going up in 2023. And most importantly, we actually pulled off a white elephant Christmas party, which was a lot of fun. After staffing up, our internal priority has obviously been the admin core. This is, again, especially acute because we take on so much data, and keeping this info accessible is a priority not only for our sound file retention, but also for reporting out to our partners at the county, state, regional level, SACOG, as well as reporting out to ourselves. So obviously this data can be mined to help us establish better performance benchmarks, turnaround times, appropriate staff time on projects, fees, and this will ultimately better serve our community. So Excella is our current record-keeping software, and this will be critical to ensuring our procedural consistency. We're simultaneously enhancing it while also being a bit critical and evaluating it as well. We do have to work with an external consultant to make these enhancements, which does add some time to implementation. We also work closely with our own IT team here as well. In speaking with IT, we have identified a possible position as a business analyst position, which may help CDD greatly translate our needs into Excel as well as into the GIS mapping platform. So just as I mentioned, super excited to work with IT further to transition from what you can see here is the paper here in our engineering division into the GIS platform and basically use the GIS platform as our filing cabinet, so to speak, where all the information is organized via parcel and you can pull up records for that parcel just by looking at the map. We literally just had a meeting about that this afternoon as well. So I think we've made some progress there, which is exciting. Moving on just to our divisions and specifically to planning, we're looking to make some code changes again with an eye towards a faster turnaround for projects, potentially moving projects that are currently approved at the council level down to the planning commission level. Those would be things we would vet with you guys. As well as adding a planning tech position to the planning division that would be specifically catering towards the planning division's needs with the potential to roll up into the assistant position as well. For the development engineering side of things, we have a goal of trying to be more proactive with our review cycles, getting comments earlier in the review cycle process, developing existing staff, cross-training and delegating to that staff, and potentially adding a dedicated engineering tech who could help with routing, deposit tracking, and consultants. Development engineering has a lot of deposit accounts that are constantly being drawn down upon, and it does take our engineering manager quite a bit of time to monitor those accounts. So lastly, with building, again, adding that plan checker position or converting that inspector position to plan checker, and then training and advancing inspectors, again, with an eye towards reducing reliance on consultants and saving money, specifically getting some sprinkler and fire training done that could potentially save us some more money. So just to wrap up, as we train ourselves, obviously, we simplify the organization. We understand where information is. We're faster and more fluent at getting that information. And all these internal improvements are really with an eye to better serve the public. And give us more faster turnaround times as well as better options, more options for the public to submit into our department. So with that, I conclude my presentation and welcome any thoughts or questions.
Questions from the council?
Thank you. That was really great presentation. My only question is, do you still love us?
Absolutely. I honestly say I really like the people I work with in my department. We're just super supportive. We get it done. We're bootstrapping our way through this and hustling. It's a bit hard to do the house cleanup while you're also just doing your job day to day, but hugely stimulating. Yeah. The more I learn, the less I know to some degree. But I enjoy that. So it's great.
Well, thanks, Christian. I really appreciate the job that you're doing and that your staff is doing. Same thing on the financial end. When we know that things are being handled in the planning department, it takes a lot of pressure off of us, which, I mean, that's our job. Like, we can take it, right? But it's good to know that you're handling it, that things are getting done. And when it's not getting done, there's a legitimate reason and we're going to figure it out and not just set it in a corner and forget about it. So I really appreciate the work you're doing and your staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I would modify what you said just a little bit in that there's somebody in between us and them whose job it is to oversee all of that as well. And so you doing an incredibly good job means he doesn't need to worry about it.
Right.
And that we don't need to worry about it.
Yes.
And I very much support what Councilmember Andreotta said. You're doing great work. We deeply appreciate it. Ben, any questions?
I was just gonna say, I understand your feeling about the more you learn, the less you feel like you know. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel the same way sometimes.
Well,
I will also say that Holly is the only council member that could have asked you that question, do you still love us? And not
The heart and soul. Yeah, no, that's what we're all
There,
about.
there you go, yes.
Yeah.
Dan? Questions, comments? No?
Well, the only thought is that it's a work in progress and you've made great progress. Still a lot of work to do. But it seems like everybody is accepting that workload, the workload of cross-training changing.
Yeah, I would totally concur. I feel like everyone's excited, to get it done. And I mean, I've imprinted upon the folks that we're here to clean this up and get going. So definitely looking forward to moving into 2023 with that.
And integrating an IT person, whatever you call them, into the organization is a great idea.
I did have a quick question. I mean, to interrupt. So how much are you, Jen, are you really just their IT person right now? So are you doing like double and triple duty until we can get that person?
Careful, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not necessarily an IT person in the sense of an IT technical,
Right.
like computers type solving problems. This is a hole that we have in the organization right now that I'm trying to fill.
Right.
And it's that go-between person between systems, pulling data, reports,
Right.
custom changes, workflow, all of that stuff. The same thing that I'm doing with the Tyler project with implementation as well. And so, yeah, that's the position that,
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you for that as well.
yeah, no problem.
I was gonna say, with the city growing the way it is, community development department is actually very important. So, good work.
Thank you.
You have a quick question that memory serves, you had 3 building inspector slots, you're converting 1. The
Yes,
plan
correct.
should
And
be-
we are using 2 consultants as well. So we have a little bit of a buffer there should there be a downturn or anything.
So you're not concerned about being able to handle the volume of inspections that were,
Not currently, no. I think we're doing just fine with the consultants that we have. We have the 2 augmented consultants as well, so.
very good. I don't have anything else for you either. I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item or have any questions? Tony, this is your chance.
You didn't jump up.
No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Christian. Much appreciated. That completes our presentations. We move on to public comment on non-agendized items. This is the opportunity for anyone wishing to comment on an item not on our agenda tonight to do so. I've got multiple cards here. If you haven't filled one out, it would be helpful if you did so. They're the blue cards on the table over here, and get them to staff. The first one I have is Ann Constantine Burge.
Jean Burge. I live in Sun City. Last week, the News Messenger was almost entirely devoted to Lincoln's Placer County-owned Titan missile site. You all have a copy of what I'm reading. In the event Russia attacked the US, Beale Air Force Base operated the site from 1962 to 1965. In 1968, Placer County bought the massive 1,600 foot by 900 foot or 34 acre site and all of its contaminants. In 1991, trichloroethylene or TCE, a known carcinogen, was discovered in the site's soil and groundwater. Though test extractions were done in the early 2000s and the Army Corps of Engineers tested groundwater and soil vapor in wells identified by the yellow poles, nothing has been cleaned up. During an October 26, 22 Zoom meeting with Sun City Lincoln Hills residents, Sean said the Titan site has a lot of very boring environmental details. Though the 16-acre TCE contaminated groundwater plume continues moving about 11 feet per year towards Sun City residents. And he went ahead and said, Sean said, you wouldn't want to sleep next to it. There's thousands of pages of reports and documents that discuss the tons of lead ammo from the Placer County Sheriff's Range and the Placer Foothills Shooters Club. Massive leaking underground storage tanks and associated soils and piping contaminated with acids, rocket fuels, diesel and its derivatives, and a host of alphabet soup chemicals that include PFAS, PFOS, PCBs, and PAWS. Chemicals dumped in the site's septic tanks, sewage ponds, and oxidation ponds have possibly drained into Ride-to-Walks ponds and Ingram Slough. Millions of gallons of asbestos-contaminated water remain in the silos. At one point, the Spinozas leased water from the county to put water onto their property. Recently, I discovered companies which provide hazard data to insurance companies. One such company and my insurance company now know about all 54 Titan silo locations across America. I demand a complete cleanup of the contaminated Lincoln Titan site. Failure to do this before the utility trench is dug, Oak Tree Lane is widened, or any developer breaks ground is an act of moral, financial, and political stupidity. I am part of that 3%, but most of the time I'm part of the 97%. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Ann. Ray Burge.
He's a hard act to follow.
It is.
My name is Ray Burge. I live in Sun City. This was an interesting discussion about surveys and so forth today, and whoever made the comment about the grocery store, don't underestimate that. That's pretty powerful, actually. My concern is rumors as much as anything else. So let me just say it this way. Since this last article came out in the newspaper and the research that Anna's done, it stirred up kind of a bunch of bees in the area where I live and the people I deal with. And it's kind of interesting because what it really comes down to me is about misinformation and the lack of information and the level of ignorance in our own committee about this sort of stuff. So I have 3 questions that I would like the council to publicly answer that may solve some of these rumors before it gets any worse. And a really pretty simple answer. The first one, and probably the most prevalent one that I get hit with is the city of Lincoln currently in negotiations or intend negotiations to buy the Titan site itself to build a park on? I don't know that, and I'm telling you, most of the people I deal with have no idea. There's all kinds of rumors about what's been done, hasn't been done, and so forth. The second question is, are there specific plans on how to conduct a cleanup of that area? I'm talking specifically about the Titan missile site. And if so, what would the cost be to the city? And how would they go about it? And that's the third one. How and why can the city council justify spending potentially tens of thousands of dollars really of taxpayers' money to buy knowing contaminated property? And if so, do they plan to clean it up themselves, or do they plan to have it done through litigation for the next 20 years like it happens so often? So if those 3 questions could get publicly answered, I think that in itself would serve the community a lot, and you guys do a heck of a job, so thank you.
I think I might have missed one. I got 2 questions. Was there a third?
The first question was,
Are we negotiating? for the
negotiating. The second question is, are there specific plans to conduct a cleanup? Are you guys thought through the process and specifically how to do it? And then the third one was a little more of the same thing.
Okay. Thank you, Ray.
Questions?
So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go through all the questions, and then I'll have staff answer any of the questions that they feel that they can.
I'd appreciate that. And if you goes back to our survey, if you can find a way to get this out to the community publicly, I think it would serve everybody real well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. One of the challenges of this portion of the agenda is that we're not, as a council, able to go into any great depth answering your questions, so we have to turn it over to staff.
I understand that.
All right, thank you. Albert Schreiber.
Good evening, Albert Schreiber. I'm here tonight to strongly encourage council to, as soon as they possibly can, separate out Sudbee project and the Village 7 area from the Village 5 project. And what I mean by separated out is right now they're all tied together at LAFCO for the MSR that's being done. I think Sub B should have been annexed years ago. That's my opinion. As far as Village 7, what's remainder of it, I wouldn't mind if it was annexed, but I have 3 conditions. Those conditions are there is no technical line between Village 5 and Village 7 right now. We have established a recorded line in the same approximate area with the county for the Williamson Act lines, and we'd like that to be used. So that's the first one. Second one is if it's annexed, I'd like everything south of the line that I just mentioned canceled at no charge to anyone. The third is I have a neighbor that's in Village 7 that has never wanted to be annexed and still doesn't. Actually has a letter from the city saying they will never force him to annex, which has been ignored for the last 5 years. And so I'd like him and his neighbors, if they so wish, to be drawn out of Village 7 and into Village 5. That will create no islands or no other conflicts. If these 3 conditions are agreed to, then there should be no opposition from any of the landowners in Sub B or Village 5, or sorry, Village 7, sorry. That being said, you might be asking why I'm saying this now, and good question, thanks for asking. Because, you know, until recently, I've been told not to discuss the lawsuits, CEQA, et cetera, that we have with the city in a public forum. So now that that's changed, we have for the last 5 years been reaching out to the city in good faith and Richland to try to negotiate. All have fallen short, obviously. So I've stood at this podium repeatedly and said, I'm not against development. I'm against bad development. I think Village 5 is bad development. I think it's bad for the city. So if you want Village 7 that bad, then I'm willing to talk about that. Like I said, we've been trying for 5 years to negotiate in good faith. And if I had more time, I'd give more details. But that's my recommendation, is to separate them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Darla, is it Gutierrez? Hey, Darla.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine. I just wanted to give you an update. First of all, I want to thank you for supporting me from last meeting. I got quick response as opposed to the last 2.5 months. I'm working currently with Matt, your city director for Public Works. And from what he tells me, it looks really good. I'm not going to give it 100% yet because we're not there, but I just wanted to come and thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you, Sean, for that swift outreach. Appreciate it. Trevor Jameson.
Mayor Joyner, council members, Trevor Jameson, president of Sacramento Area Firefighters Local 522, which your Lincoln professional firefighters are members of. I just want to take a moment tonight to come here and express gratitude for the movement of the fire department in the forward direction in the last year. I know with the council's support, City Manager Scully, Chief Alves, we have had what I call kind of a banner year out here. Very proud to have the collaboration and the partnership that allowed the Lincoln firefighters to now have 3 firefighters for every fire engine. It is a great source of pride for all of Local 522. And the members of Local 522 serve all the communities of Sacramento County, Lincoln, South Placer, and West Sacramento. It's one of the largest fire unions in California and in the nation. And when our members see these things happen, it's really feather in the cap for local government, for the citizens they serve, and for our members. Not only are our citizens getting better service, but our members are more protected. And the stories I've already heard in the short amount of time that we've had those 3 firefighters on each engine, in structure fires, being able to be more effective on the fire ground, be more effective on medical aids, be more effective on things we call public assists. I've heard a story how, sometimes we have to go help people up, and it takes many members to do this. I heard a story how it took 2 engines, but last year or before we did these, we would have taken all 3 engines. So the level of service to the community has been greatly impacted. And I just want to say thank you to the council for taking the leap and in the collaboration with Lincoln firefighters and Local 522, City Manager Scully as well for his support, Chief Alves. I can just say that when we were discussing ways to have better opportunities for our members, Chief Alves was very happy to listen to us during our meeting and hear what we had to say and make a decision. I think that was better for the community, our members. And so I just want to say, I know there's a lot more to go and there's always more opportunities to better serve our community, but thank you. And we look forward to the continued partnership from Local 522, and Evan Faddis, who represents the fires out here, has done a great job, and we work together, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. We are overjoyed to have been able to find a path forward to add those 9 additional firefighters. And I think the entire community is feeling the difference. So thank you for coming. Paul Voss.
Thank you. I'm Paul Vose, and I want to first of all thank all of the people here for their service to the city. I find it very interesting that a lot of police cars have to serve and to protect. So I thank you for serving. I'll get to the protection in a moment. I do not know the procedure. I want to present it to the council that I would suggest that the minutes that were approved by the Parks and Rec Committee for the June 29th meeting be clarified, because what it specifically says is that disc golf was approved. And then it goes on to say the next steps in the procedure. But that one sentence with a period at the end speaks volumes to me, because in emails following that, both Scott and Dennis Clear have stated the plan was approved at the June meeting. Even though Scott goes on to say city council and other approvals are needed, it indicates that P&R has already approved it. This comes into a point where we were going to the following meeting at one point where actually somebody was warning from Dennis Clear, was warning them that Sean Scully warned me yesterday that some folks might be at our Park and Rec Committee tonight, expressed concerns and opposition to the disc golf course planned at the Auburn Ravine. Christine Bonkoff replied when I sent this letter to an email to the city clerk. She was very polite about explaining, warning me would be not that there was any antagonism, but there might be a larger crowd than expected to accommodate within a small arena. But the answer from him, basically from Dennis Clear, is that I will, of course, listen patiently, but explain our committee has already approved the plan to build the course in June, and the process is in place. Can anybody else explain that process? Sean made it sound like the city council would have to be involved in the final decision, but I don't understand why. Well, it sounds like, because from what I've gotten from Christine, this committee is an advisory council. That's all they can do. They have no authority to pass resolutions, sign contracts, or appropriate funds. So when they say, I will of course listen, but explain the plan has already been approved, and that's how it reads in the June minutes. So I'm just asking that when they put out the minutes, that they specify exactly what was approved. 1 hour and 50 minutes into the meeting on the video, they were talking about the approval from the Army Corps of Engineers. And if that was in reference to a committee being approving it because the Army Corps of Engineers approved it, well, I know engineers and none of them would approve anything without seeing a whole bunch of plans.
Paul, could I ask you to wrap up? Your comment?
Okay, so in this particular case, it also goes on to say that ultimately they wanted to put the course where the homeless and the trash are, not where residential areas are. Some of you know I work with Lana Bass cleaning up. If there's anybody who knows where the garbage and the homeless are, it's her. And within the city park area, there are no homeless. The trash that's dumped there is on private property because there are roads that go to it. They don't carry appliances into the city area from where they park at Moorhead. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Holly, is that a note that you'd be willing to take back to Parks and Rec and discuss those?
I will.
minutes?
I will,
I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Um,
Because there does need to be some clarification with some of the members, how they say things.
Yeah, and some of that may be, I'll use this term very broadly, our fault for not really making it very, very clear what the role of the Parks and Rec Committee members is. I suspect you're about to say what I really want to say, so I'm going to go ahead and let you do that.
Yeah, so, well, I think it's fair to clarify that, just so it's really clear where we're at. What I also say is a few things. One is, I have clarified that dozens of times, and my emails have been records requested, which is fine, and that has been clear and made clear many, many times since that time. And so, hopefully folks are watching on Zoom. In fact, I think we've said it at this meeting a few different times that regardless of what the minutes say, and Gwen can tell you that even the very best of clerks from time to time will record, minutes that aren't clear in certain areas and they need to be amended. So that's totally fair. But to just be really clear to the community, no decision in terms of funding or construction of this project has been made because, quite frankly, it has not been brought to the city council.
Yeah, I'll go
Period.
back
Full
even
stop.
further. There has not been whatever action Parks and Rec may have taken. The only action they could have taken would have been to make a recommendation to the council. They have not done so. This has not risen to our level. There is no project, there is no funding, there is no plan. And until such time as all of that happens, if it comes officially before us, which will be in a very public process, there simply is no project. to
Right.
debate.
And so maybe the comment was that it's already been approved. What he might have meant was that Park and Rec have already agreed to bring it to council, but that doesn't mean that it's approved. So
So I
we'll
would seek
clarify. Yeah.
clarification as to
Yes.
whether they have
Yes.
formally made a decision to make a recommendation.
Well, as far as I know, they haven't done that yet because we're still waiting for more information.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll take it back.
Please, thank you.
Because specifically, I have asked for more information. I've asked for other options as well, so.
Is it Georgie Dykstra? Is it George? Okay. I had it as a JI, but it's not.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm here to talk about the renovation in Atkins Park. And I've contacted several of you and some of you have been able to get back to me. And my issue is shade in the park. I'm a grandfather and I go to my granddaughter's soccer games. And if you go to soccer games, most of the time in the year here, it's very, very hot, almost impossible to sit and watch the soccer games. I'm not sure if this is too late a request because I've just become aware of it, but I would love to see us have some adequate shade for the soccer field so parents and grandparents can watch with some level of comfort. And I'd also hope that we could have some trees planted. It'll be a while before they'll be helpful, but I'd love to see that happen. If that can happen and we can have shade there, it would be terrific. If it can, that would, as I say, terrific. But if not, I would hope going forward, and I don't think there's any further parks planned for a while, but when those things are planned, I'd like shade to be part of that plan. and it might be very beneficial for everybody. So I appreciate it and thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you, George. I have one last card. Marcia Schnaps. Yep, thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I want to say thank you all for your service. I'm a resident in Lincoln, and one of the reasons we moved here recently was because of how well managed we think you all do. But that being said, I'm one of the individuals who's concerned about preserving, protecting the Auburn Ravine Lincoln Crossing Nature Preserve. We have, one of the requests we've made is that the Park and Recreations Department look at alternate locations. And I know a couple of the council members here have spoken that they're supposed to be looking at alternate locations, but we have no evidence that the council has formally directed them to look at alternate locations. So we are requesting that you actually formally direct the Park and Recs Department to look at alternate locations for the Auburn Ravine Lincoln Crossing Nature Preserve. With that in mind, just the work we've done, we've reached out to several federal and state environmental agencies who are concerned that a sports venue would be sited within a nature preserve that is basically there to protect endangered and species of interest. And there are over 10 different threatened and species of interest within the preserve. So one of the things we thought we'd do just as concerned citizens is start putting together information for residents and visitors, a did you know sort of brochure, because it is a jewel. I mean, think about how many cities have nature preserves within their city limits, and the opportunity for children to learn about these threatened species without having to go very far, literally city blocks, I think is a real opportunity for the city. And I think the city should basically celebrate that for having the wherewithal to do that. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that those are some of the actions. So not only would we like that this golf course located in a more appropriate location, but we would also encourage the city to start sort of valuing the preserve and letting us know what we can do to assist with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Appreciate it. So, yeah, I'll get to Melanie in a second. It's all right. No. It's a couple of things. It's, again, there is no project, there is no recommendation. So for council to reverse this and go down and say, hey, look at other locations would almost be an indication that we want there to be a project. But Holly is our liaison there. She could certainly carry that message and has, I believe, and my understanding is that
Billy has also. Yeah, we both have.
and my understanding is actually that Scott Boynton did lead the proponents on a tour of some alternate sites. So that's in the works. The other thing is, being new to Lincoln, you may not know that we require 40% open space on all new development. So we value our open space incredibly highly, so much so we've written it into our general plan moving forward from here on out. So Melanie Bouchard, you're up next. I apologize for burying that one card deep.
Okay, Paul, I forgive you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. In the spirit of things that we've seen here this evening, I also wanted to say to you, I came to you with concerns last fall about two specific members on the planning council, and those members are no longer there. So I want to say thank you in addition to everything else you've gotten done. You took care of that. You listened to me. You listened to some of my people that came with me and our concerns, and I appreciate seeing that work. So thank you. I also have a suggestion for a flash vote question. And that would be, should disc golf be located on a lovely historic piece of Dorothy Whitney land called Deer Crossing? Thanks.
The way you wrote that question might show a bit of a bias, but yes. Okay. That's the last card I have. Is there anyone else wishing to comment during public comment on an item not on the agenda? Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, as Wynn passes that information to you. It's a bit of an excerpt of a meeting that took place, if you look at the date, January the 24th, 2017, exactly 6 years. On the very last page, I've simply made a notation and highlighted it. And my comment has to do with the McBean baseball field. I think it's a great addition to the city of Lincoln. I've been there a few times. I certainly would like to go more. However, and I brought this point up, back in 2017, on this particular date, an issue came up and the council was approving a work that was done out at the field for a little over $1 million. And at that time, I brought it to the council's information that not 1 cent of that was spent on any accessibility issues at that time. Having said that, since then, there has been, and I want to make that very, very clear. Many, many things have been added to the park to really highlight it. The safety netting for the stands and automobiles, more work to the turf in the field. First and third baseline dugouts have been refurbished. Sunscreen area over the stadium for those hot days. Outfield lighting, certainly restrooms, announcers box, and so on. The one thing that hasn't happened yet is the seating there at the park. There is disability seating on the first baseline bleachers, on the third baseline bleachers, but not in the center of the park. There's no way in a wheelchair or any mobility device that you can get up there and use that. I heard one of the council members a couple of months ago, there's no need to bring that name up, but what was said was essentially, well, there's plenty of seats for the disabled. So what, come on, okay, so you can't sit in the center. And that's the primary purpose of why the ADA was put into place. It's the backward thinking that, well, it only takes up a small space and we've done as best we can. The issue is really you haven't. You have a great field there. I don't know if William Jessup, I don't know if the Potters realize that you still have a field that is not accessible, fully accessible for the disabled. The center section, it's just as important to anyone else where they want to sit as well. And unfortunately, the disabled community, the mobilized ones, immobilized ones, they don't have that option. So if you might want to think of it in these terms, think about your favorite place that you like to watch that baseball from. Watch that game. That's the favorite place you want to see, if you could ever have that. And then somebody comes up and says, well, we're going to take that section out. What do you do then? It's a civil rights issue. I'd really like you to look into it and make sure we can get that taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Anyone else? No? Anyone on Zoom? All right. Go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to you, Sean. We've got 3 questions from Ray. You'd like to address those, and then we have the question with respect to shade at Aiken Park as well.
Sure. I'm going to try to remember the questions. But the first question is, are we actively engaged in negotiating for the purchase of the missile site? The answer is no. We're not having, the city has been engaged in the past for negotiation of that property, but not in any formal setting during my time here, which is about a year now. 2 is, I think the question was, is the city willing to do whatever is the appropriate method to remediate the contamination? Was that essentially it?
Will the city take that on?
No. And the reason for that is that.
Let me tag on to that. Oh, no.
Yeah. I think what I would say, and I don't think I'm going to offend any of the engineers that I have sitting in the room, but we are experts at a number of different things, and environmental remediation is a niche unto itself. And so the reason why the federal government typically, they have a number of different departments that typically take lead on that, is it requires experts that understand the science of how to appropriately remediate. That said, I think we've been pretty clear that the city is certainly similarly concerned and wants to see the federal government take their responsibility seriously and remediate the property to alleviate any of those concerns. And I don't remember the third, I'm sorry.
I only had half a scribble on that one.
It had to do with basically, how can the city council spend money on purchasing property knowing it's contaminated, which I think
Which
we're not doing.
Yeah, so one thing I want to mention is I'm not sure of everybody's resumes in this room, but I can tell you that I'm probably one of the few people in this room who've spent many, many years working on brownfield sites. I've presented at the Brownfields Conference. I'm very familiar with environmental contamination. And while real estate transactions and development do happen on contaminated sites all over the country, they do. The process by which you buy and or sell those are very complicated and have a lot of legal components that are built in to ensure safety and use of those properties, and we're nowhere near that at this point.
And I think I'm safe in saying from the council's perspective that regardless of the deal, until that property is cleaned up, the city is unwilling to accept it to within our inventory or.
Right. Oh, and I was just going to add to that. Sorry if I interrupted, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to say that the newspaper article, the research itself was good. It was a good article, but the other part of that made it seem like that the council's not doing their job, that we aren't worried about it, and that that there needs to be a demand for us to make sure it gets cleaned up. And I'd like to say that we are demanding that it gets cleaned up, and we've been talking about it. And so I think the newspaper editorial was a little bit misleading, and I don't really appreciate that. I'm happy to answer questions. People are concerned, but we have been on top of it. And so I just want to make that clear that I'm agreeing with you. We're not going to accept it. We're not going to buy it. We're not going to do anything until the proper authorities clean it up.
And that's probably as far as Christine's going to let us
Yes.
go on responding to that. So
Thank you, Mayor.
Aikens Park.
I like to just push the envelope just as far as I can.
Then the shade question. So George and I were actually emailing about that, and we do have a shade structure that's being constructed at Aiken Park. It was sort of like, I think it's the last major amenity, right, Travis, that's left?
Yeah, we've got a couple punch lists and closeout processes. One component of that project that was previously approved that's under construction is shade sales. So we've got some in the tot lot and sort of child play areas, along with some of the shade sales going in the picnic and hardscape areas. So that's a amenity that'll be coming in the very near future.
So there will be shade in the park, but George, I don't want to mislead you to want shade structures for the playing fields is a pretty unrealistic outcome. Trees could certainly be done. Right, but it would be parallel to the fields, correct?
Mhm.
It's that's the area that normally, if you actually take a look at a lot of the kids' soccer games, there's a whole lot of pop-up tents that folks bring along and set up there. But I think it would be incredibly expensive for the city to try to put shade structures next to all of our soccer fields. I understand the desire for it. I agree with that. All right. That wraps up, I believe, our public comment and the questions that we had. So we move on to our consent agenda. Any member of the council wishing to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, item 8S, please.
I also agree with 8S.
Okay. Anyone else? Any member of the public wishing to have an item removed from the agenda? Mr. Chapman. 8I. I have 8I and 8S. Anyone on Zoom?
No, Mayor, no one on Zoom.
With that, I'll accept a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Gwen, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. First up, we'll take item 8I, adopt resolution 2023-08, accepting CIP 459 wastewater treatment. Remind me what the R is. WWTRF oxidation ditch accelerator conversions and maturation pond liner project as accepted, and authorize the city clerk to file notice of completion with Placer County Recorder. Mr. Chapman, did you need a presentation on this, or do you just have a question for us?
No, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Hopefully it can be answered. It's more of a housekeeping thing for me. The agendas that have come out over the years have been very, very good. In fact, they've gotten even better about sharing the information, sometimes without even actually having to go into the packet to do more research. And I've noticed that what has happened, and I think it's really helpful for all of us, is whatever projects have come along, not only will it tell us what fund it is, and oftentimes what they will also show, particularly in the packet, but sometimes on the agenda, is you'll actually show, like here we have two accounts, 721 and 725, and it shows the amounts that were pulled from those. But it's also helpful for, I think, me and several others, is to find out what is the remaining balance in those accounts that may be unencumbered. It's helpful to be able to see and know what's going on and what's there, just from a standpoint of where are we, and then I may or may not have questions like anybody else. So I'm just looking to find out if that information could continue. If there's an unencumbered balance, we should know what that is.
Nita, I think that should be available on the dashboard, correct? Fund balances.
Yeah, the fund balances are available on the financial transparency dashboard that is updated monthly.
Okay, and oftentimes what happens too, and I've said this before, is not all the time, but many times is items that all of us, I think, bring to the council via the TV and that sort of thing. That way, this information can be a little bit more readily available. I think from the standpoint of maybe there are still people out there from a computer standpoint that may or may not help. This has been going on in the past. It's terrific. If the information is there, it would greatly be appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Chapman. Anyone else on this item? If not, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Go ahead and roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. On to item 8S. Council committee appointments.
Okay, so I'm going to apologize. We're going to have a little family conversation here. So Mayor Joyner has assigned himself all three of the major regional boards, SACOG, which is Sacramento Area Council of Governments, PCTPA, which is Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and GSEC, Greater Sacramento Economic Council. When we were requesting our appointments, I asked to keep GSEC. I sat on the board last year, and GSEC would actually like to have more continuity and not have so much changeover every year. A little bit of history in the areas where I've had some say in this last couple of years, I feel like I've been very gracious. When Placer County started the homeless task force with all of the jurisdictions in the region, it was supposed to be Mayor Silhai and myself on there. Councilmember Joyner asked if he could have it, and I gave it to him. And I was fine doing that because he was very passionate about that. And we're both on it now, but at the time I let him have it. When I became mayor, he made a very strong argument to keep SACOG and PCTPA because he's been on that for a long time. And we had a very robust conversation about it, but I ended up letting him keep that. And now when I am asking to keep GSEC, because I was on it last year and I feel like it's the best thing for the city, I was told that it was not up for debate. So I've heard Mayor Joyner and other council members talk about institutional knowledge a lot. And so my point here is that you have 2 years left on the council. Myself and Councilmember Brown, we have 4 more, maybe more. And so although you're going to do a lot of good work still in 2 years, we're going to be here for a lot longer. And if you continue to hold all the major regional appointments, who's going to benefit when you leave the council? It's my contention that it's not in the best interest of the city for you to have a monopoly on these 3 appointments. And last year, when we were having this conversation and you were lobbying to keep SACOG and PCTPA, you said to me, it's not about our personal opportunities, but it's what's best interest of the city. And I agreed with you. And so now I'm going to say the same thing back to you. Who is benefiting by you keeping all 3 of these major regional appointments? And it should also be known, which you all know this, that there's no other council in our region where one person has all 3 of these to themselves. They share it and they split it up. So I'm again, tried to have this conversation between the 2 of them. I'm respectfully asking that I keep GSEC and you keep SACOG and PCTPA, because it's not appropriate for one person to have all 3 of those. So thank you for listening.
So I will respond to that. Couple of different things. It is very common for the same individual to have PCTPA, SACOG, and Sparta. That is very common. In fact, it's incredibly important because when we had PCTPA and SACOG split, 2 different individuals were having half of the conversation.
I don't disagree with that. We're not talking about those
With respect
2.
to GSEC, you'll recall that the way it actually went was that GSEC changed their rules. And they reached out to me and requested that I ask that I be allowed to serve on GSEC. I'm a founding member of the board of GSEC. I've served twice on GSEC, so with respect to institutional knowledge and memory, if any of us on this board have that for GSEC, it's me. But more than that, this body discussed it. They heard your argument and decided that we were going to stay with the mayoral rotation, which is the system we have.
Yes.
Which is the system we started with. And so we are simply staying with the decision that was made last year, which was the mayor rotates into the GSEC position. Next year, it'll be Dan. The year after that, it'll be whoever is the mayor at that time. So we made a decision last year that we were going to stay with the mayoral rotation on GSEC.
No, we didn't. We said mayor rotation for who's mayor here. We never talked about GSEC. And GSEC changed the rules. So,
And they changed
no,
the
we,
rules last year.
they changed the rules so they could have more continuity. And I spoke to the CEO myself and he said, yes, you can stay. And so that's fine if they reached out to you personally, but nobody reached out to me. And I spoke to him and he said I could stay if that's what we chose to do. And no one's arguing that SACOG and PCTPA should stay together. That's why you still have them. But it's not okay to have all 3 of them. Paul.
I have given up virtually every committee assignment I've had. Dan's got major regional assignments. I've given you 4 new regional assignments. You are going to have your hands friggin'
But I
full.
specifically said GSEC was the one that I wanted the most because I sat on it last year. I didn't ask for all those other ones. I said, I will do them if it's necessary.
Well,
okay, you know what? I don't want to have a brawl about it. I just want it to be known that I think it's highly inappropriate and I think it's selfish. And I think that I have been very gracious when you have asked for things. And
recall that I asked to serve on the JPA.
But Dan and I were the ones that were dealing with that. So that's one example. But I gave you the homeless. When I was mayor, I gave you everything you asked for.
Well, unless there's discussion specifically on this among the council, I'll go ahead and move on to Bill's.
I do want to say one thing. I believe, particularly in regional things, that continuity is really important. And I believe how you achieve continuity is through appointment of alternates that will attend the meetings of the That's how you scratch both itches. The one that says that if you've spent 3 years, 4 years, 5 years building rapport with the agency and the staff and so on, and you're going to leave for whatever reason, you need the backfill. And almost every time, certainly on a regional level, that I've been an alternate, when first couple of years I was on the council, I attended every meeting that I was an alternate for. Unless it was a schedule. So that's my answer to, Tom Cosgrove held those same 3 seats for about 10 years. And Highway 65 is in large, is doing large to his rapport with all of the agencies that built over those 10 years. So I believe in strong, I don't, to be honest with you, with GSEC, everybody except the CEOs are rotating. So I don't know, I've never thought about continuity in this, in the sense of GSEC.
Well, that's why they changed the rules this last year, so they could have more continuity, because if it's the
Actually, they
mayor,
changed the
they're
rules.
always,
They changed the rules. When I
oh,
was on.
whenever they did it, so they could have more continuity. That's why they did it.
So I will acknowledge too that I did appoint you as alternate to all those major committees. And I strongly encourage you, whether it's virtually or otherwise, to attend all of those, to build those relationships. And to build.
Sure,
That's
sure.
why I gave you those.
Well, I appreciate
So that
that,
we can
but
build
it's not
that
like
bridge.
it's not like you've been on GSEC the last couple of years. Alyssa was on it and then I was on it and she was still on the competitive council and we were doing it together. You haven't been there for a couple of years. So to say for continuity for you to jump back to it, that doesn't make sense to me. I appreciate the
I was
alternate.
simply responding to your argument of continuity.
Yeah,
There is
I-
continuity to be had. It is in the base of knowledge and experience that I have on that board. But the biggest thing is simply that we've already decided to stay with the mayoral rotation at GSEC.
We
We
never
decided-
talked about GSEC. When we talked about rotating the mayor, it was who was
Last
going to
year-
sit in the
so
seat.
last year
We
when I
never talked
suggested-
about GSEC.
Last year when I suggested, and I don't want to keep going on with this, the council can make up their mind what they want to do. Last year when I suggested at the behest of GSEC that I might fill that role, this council was pretty adamant that we stay with the rotation, and you as mayor were sent.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We stay with
I
the
don't remember
rotation.
you saying that they asked for you to stay. I don't remember that. So that's my bad if I don't remember that. But
Let's move on if we can. Bill, you had some comments?
Yes, I do. Not to be contentious, but I'm going to be contentious. Holly seems to have a problem with not getting the assignments that she wanted. I have no assignments, okay? Which is ridiculous, all right? And the reason being is that little incident with Oliver. Now, I think I was set up. I think Oliver was used as a weapon against me. And I know exactly who did it. Because she admitted it. Not you. I didn't say you.
well, you're looking at me.
Well, one of her girlfriends. Anyway, I'm a little bit tired of this, okay? You asked me, Paul, what committees I wanted to be on. I gave you a list. The only thing contentious is I don't want to serve on a committee with Councilmember Andreotta, and I think this is obvious why I don't. Okay, she's very ambitious, she's very aggressive, and I'm sorry, I just don't agree with this at all. I think this should be tabled and it should be redone, okay?
I appreciate those sentiments. As mayor, you'll recall that the council censured you.
And you were part of it, and you were part of it.
Removed you from any committee assignments.
I think that was
I
wrong.
have been given no authority.
Well, you can ask for authority.
Well,
We could take a vote.
no, we can't do that here tonight, Bill.
No, that's true. Oh, what do you want to talk about? The Brown Act? You want to talk about violations of the Brown Act, Paul?
I want to talk about the agenda.
Well, this agenda, okay, this agenda needs to be changed. I think it needs to be rejected, and that's it. If you want to talk just about this one, I think it should be rejected.
All right, I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Okay. I'll go ahead and bring it back up here. And we'll see where we go with this. Is there a motion to approve this item as presented?
For purposes of a vote, I move we approve this item.
I have a second.
What does that mean? No, I just want to know what that means. Purpose of a vote.
Just what it means.
All right.
I think the indication is he's not saying that he's in favor necessarily or opposed to the resolution
Normally,
as
you move.
presented, but without someone making a motion, there can be no action taken one way or the other.
Okay. No discussion, no action. So,
Do I have a second?
and there's no second, it dies.
I'll second it.
Quinn, I have a motion and a second.
Yes, Councilmember Carl Skint.
Dan, how are you thinking?
Just thinking.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
No.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. I will point.
That. You know what, I do want to just say this while I'm thinking of it. If there is any desire to agendize an item revisiting the censure of Councilmember Lauritsen, let's have somebody bring it up in council initiated business. If not, then we'll just simply move forward as is. With this, we move on to public hearings, waive the first reading and introduce by title only ordinance 1059B, amending Lincoln Municipal Code Section 2.50.070 and 2.05.080 regarding attendance requirements for continued participation on boards, committees, and commissions, and finding the ordinance is exempt from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. Ms. Molikoff.
Thank you, council. You may recall at your last city council meeting, this ordinance was originally brought before you following some direction from council about the need to clarify the attendance requirements for our boards and commissions. And so with your direction that I received at the last council meeting, there were changes that were made. And so instead of this now as revised, it would have only applied to regular meetings. It now applies to both regular and special meetings. So in other words, board and commission members cannot miss more than 25% of meetings, whether those are special or regular. And that is going to be during the period calculated as the last 12 months rather than the calendar year. So in other words, that the way it used to be, it was between January and December, and then the clock reset in January. So this is going to be, as Mayor Joyner pointed out, a rolling calendar. So it will be, when we move into the month of February, it will be the previous March through February. When we move into March, it will be the previous calendar year and the previous 12 months and not just the calendar year for the year 2023 or 2024. So with those changes, I'll take any questions. Otherwise, I would recommend that the council reopen the public hearing to address these new revisions and changes. And following that, adopt by title only the ordinance amending sections 2.50.070 and 080. And also finding that this ordinance is exempt from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act because it's not a project and there's no way it could make an impact upon the environment.
Any questions or comments? So, any member of the public wishing, yeah, you're right, public hearing. All right, if there are no questions or comments from the council, I'll go ahead and reopen the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this item, please come to the podium. Seeing none, anyone on Zoom? No, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back up here for a motion, please.
A second.
We have a motion, Carlskent, second Brown.
Yes. Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here.
and Mayor Joyner.
Do you mean to vote here?
I meant to vote here.
That's an abstention.
That's an abstention, exactly.
Yes. All right, we move on to general business. Item 10A, adopt resolution 2023-019 of the City Council of the City of Lincoln, rescinding resolution 2020-011, financial reporting, and resolution 2019-027, financial close, and approving the financial policies.
Mayor, we actually realized in meeting during a couple of items back that we have a significant paperwork error in the last half of this agenda item as it was published in the agenda. And so there's nothing wrong with our recommendation to move forward aside from the correct paperwork is not included as an attachment. So we'd respectfully ask if the council could continue that to the next meeting. We apologize for that mistake.
If there's no objection,
No objection.
we'll go ahead and do that. We'll move on to item 10B, adopt resolution 2023-020, adopt a biennium budget period. I have to be careful not to say biannual, which has been my habit. Makes staff really nervous because it sounds like it's twice a year. Rescinding resolution 2019-080, budget policy, and approving the biennial budget policy. Nita.
I'm going to steal some of her thunder, Mayor, just real quick. So I just want to take the opportunity before she presents this item to you to say that this is one of the items that the council, many council members since I've started here have brought up to me over and over again about we've always wanted to move to a biennium budget, a 2-year budget, and it just never happened. And so Mayor and the rest of the council, don't feel bad about saying biannual budget. I sat through our initial staff meeting to get everybody up to speed on this process and referred to it as a biannual budget literally the entire time. So, but what I wanted to say before I kick it over to Nita is that this process is going to be new for us, and we're, if approved, we've done some research and we've consulted with other cities that are under a 2-year budget. So we've learned a little bit about the best way to implement it. But I just wanted to thank Nita in particular, because taking on this project in the midst of a ERP software upgrade, which is a whole nother multi-year project unto itself, is ambitious and I think a little bit scary for both of us. But she's game, and the rest of the staff are ready to move on too. So thanks, Nita.
I think the word he was looking for is insanity. But we are, the item before you at this moment is the resolution to approve the biennium budget period. That is really the first step in the process of changing from an annual budget to a biennium, is to get the approval of the governing body. So this policy has been revised and amended to include those terms of moving from a 12-month period to a 24-month period. We also took the opportunity to do some cleanup and revamping based on the current best practices of the information that's in a budget policy. I would just say that, as noted in my staff report, the advantages of a biennium budget is that it helps the governing body keep that long-term forecast and that 2-year outlook. And in addition, we'll be including in this budget process, or in the budget package, a 5-year projection, which will include the 2 years of budget plus a 3-year outlook. This will allow for, we hope, better long-range planning and strategic thoughts for the city and just give us an opportunity to embrace this new budget policy. But it is brand new to the city. And at the meeting where we introduced this to staff, it was very quiet. And I think we've managed to scare all the staff, but we're going to work through it. This first biennium period will begin July of 2023 and end June of 2025. So we expect the first budget to be a little rocky, but we will bring you a solid document for your adoption. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council?
The only thing you could have added is at the same time, why don't we do a zero-based budget?
We used to.
I prefer priority-based budgeting over zero-based budgeting, but we can have that conversation if you like.
No, I'm kidding.
We used to for a very long time. Jim Estep came in and changed us to that zero base after the books had not been closed or audited. All right. If there are no questions from council, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Anyone wishing to comment on this item, Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Byron Chapman, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. I just wanted to look at, or at least find out, we certainly look at things from a yearly basis, fiscal period, to take in all kind of factors. And the one factor would like to get more information on is how accurate can we look forward to whatever revenues that are coming into the city? I think we can certainly probably track what our expenditures are going to be. But once in a while, inflation, you call it, the bugaboo that picks up. Are we going to be able to, if that happens and takes place, what's the process? Is it easy to rectify? And how often will that be looked at in order to, if we start off in the first 2 months of that biennial, so to speak, how's that going to affect us 22, 21 months into the future? Thank you.
Great question.
So we'll use our best tools to project the revenues for the 24-month period. But keep in mind that even during the current budget process, the budget is not a one and done. In fact, we'll be bringing to you at the second meeting in February, the mid-year adjustments for this current budget period, ending fiscal year June of 2023. We're going to continue that process where we'll do those 6-month check-ins with council in the form of possible budget adjustments or budget amendments, and bringing forward to true up any revenue information that comes forward or expenses that were unplanned but need to be included. So it's not going to be, we're doing the budget and we're not going to look at it again until the end of the 24 months. We'll continue our current process of monitoring the budget and advising council as needed.
And Mayor, one other thing, the more we've thought about this process actually lends itself to more accurate projections. And here's why. Your initial proposed budget that you're going to see in the spring, where we will have a bunch of clarifying comments that explain that we're going to have to come back and adjust. But the reason why your revenues may actually end up being more accurate as you move through your budget cycle is that, think about it, in a 1-year cycle, our primary revenue source in the general fund is property tax, right? We don't receive our first property tax payment till like
January.
mid-January. And then our second one doesn't come until June, July?
Yeah, it's July.
So almost you're having to book backwards. This at least allows you to have a good segment of about 18 months in the middle where you're pretty solid. You really know what your revenues look like. And then on the sales tax side, which is less revenue for us, but still pretty important. We use HDL to track down to pretty close percentage points exactly how much we expect to adjust. And this new process will allow us, not in real time, but every 6 months to come back and say, okay, the projections with regard to the economy are looking a little bit better, we're going to recommend we bump up revenues in sales tax by 2%, let's say, or down, or whatever. So.
My experience has been multi-year budgets actually make you more responsive to changes in the environment. You aren't really held to the 6-month midterm correction. You know, if things start to go out of whack, if you have a 1-year budget, it's, unless they go out of whack in October, you can't do your budgeting. You know, if something goes out of whack, say 1 month after the 6-month correction, you don't have time to update the budget because you're starting on a new budget again. And maybe you're correct there. But I think that from our standpoint, it allows us to think and to set priorities and what we want to do better, because we're thinking with 2 years with budget, not everything cycles on a year.
I agree with that, and I hope as we go into our strategic planning session that we plan that on a 2-year cycle as well. That doesn't mean we shouldn't hold strategic planning session every year, but we'd be working that 2-year cycle going in. There's nothing else from council. Any other member of the public wishing to comment on this item?
I don't know if Treasurer Pearl is still online or not. He was.
Yes, I am, if you can hear me.
We can, Richard, go ahead.
Thank you very much. The Fiscal Investment Oversight Committee discussed this multi-year budgeting probably 9 months ago, and we promoted this to the city administration. They accepted it. We had some great discussions going back and forth about it. We're convinced that this will be a very helpful fiscal environment, for the city. Because what happens is when you make decisions today, you have to look into the impact in the next couple of years. And a single year doesn't do that for you. A multi-year gives you the starting point, and then looking forward for a 3-year outlook on top of that gives both the city council and the community the opportunity to see what the impacts are of the decisions that are made today. So we certainly endorse this going forward. We know it's going to be a challenge for the city, but we're not breaking any new ground here. This is not rocket science. Many cities have done this, and we certainly are very, very supportive of this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I'm hesitant to say this before we go to a vote, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is rare as a council member, you come in with a list of things that you hope to accomplish during your time on the council. This has been on my list from very, very early on. So hopefully in a couple of moments, I'll be able to reach up to that list and scratch one off. Truly appreciative, Sean, of you being willing to do this, and Nita, for you and your staff willing to find a way to do this. We recognize that it's going to be more work, but I think in the long run, this is really going to be beneficial to the community. With that, I will accept a motion.
I move that we approve adoption or move to approve resolution 2023-020.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Glenn, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Thank you. We move on to item 10C, adopt resolution 2023-021 of the City Council of the City of Lincoln rescinding resolution 2018-139 general fund reserve policy and approve the fund reserve policy. Nita?
Thank you. So this item before you is includes revisions and rewrites of the fund policy. Previously or currently, the city has a general fund reserve policy, which only addresses the general fund and does not indicate or address the other funds in the city, such as the enterprise funds, the debt service funds, et cetera. So we wanted to take this opportunity to revise this policy to bring it more in line with the city's current practices as well as the best practices in the industry throughout the state of California. So some of the significant changes included eliminating some of the outdated reserve categories in the general fund, such as the catastrophic economic and the OPEB reserve fund classification. And that's not to say that the city does not have the ability or the authority to commit or assign reserve amounts to specific purposes. Those still exist. And the board could, during the budget process, make the determination to commit amount to OPEB or to commit amount to the PERS UAL. And that could happen on an annual basis, or the city has under other mechanisms that it can consider to help fund those expenditures. So this doesn't take away anything from the city, but it does remove those specific categories within the general fund reserve to which right now sit on an annual basis. The other thing that we've done is that as I said, we've included other types of fund balances, such as the debt reserves. And mostly for that, we are indicating that we're going to follow the reserve amounts in the various debt covenants. For the enterprise funds, we've never had a reserve in the enterprise funds, and I'm suggesting a 25% operating reserve only. And then the big change, or the other change in the general fund, is that we're adding a range. Right now, the general fund unassigned reserve is at 25%, and we're including a range of a maximum of 25% down to a floor of 16.67%. The best practices say that 2 months of general operating revenues held in reserves is a good amount. That's the 16.67. However, many agencies are adopting this range to give their governing bodies the opportunity to include an amount that they're more comfortable with, that they feel is more appropriate based on the risks that the city face. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions, but thank you. I appreciate this and I'm very supportive.
I have one question. And that has to do with enterprise funds. I think there's a statement simply, I'm worried about enterprise funds generally have a couple, maybe 3 accounts, one for ops or operations, and that 25% is applicable to that.
Right.
The other 2 or 1 are capital replacement or capital reserves. There should be no percentage associated with that.
That's correct.
They exist to build and to go to zero, build and go to zero. This doesn't, it says the fund shall, the enterprise fund shall strive to maintain at least 25% of the unobserved operating revenues, provided the enterprise is not a deficit.
I think my response to that would be that the PFE fund and the capital replacement fund do not have operating revenues in them. Only the general operations has operating revenues in it. So
Okay. Well, okay. So you're only talking about the ops fund?
That's
Or
correct.
the ops account?
that's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm fine with it then. Okay.
I just thought as I was reading through it, I really liked the line there. It says that the committee had a spirited discussion regarding the target levels.
Yet and I'm sure Treasurer Pearl will chime in here in just a minute, that we had a very active discussion about the level of the reserves to be held in the general fund. Treasurer Pearl, if you'd like to expand on that.
Richard, you still there?
No, it's 8.
It's 8 o'clock. He's going to
Isn't
bed.
bad.
We're here? Okay.
There we go.
They're fine. I must admit, a spirited discussion among financial people is a whole universe unto itself. But we really had a very good discussion about what's the appropriate levels, and we went from the 16 and 2/3% up to the 25%. As financial people, we are more inclined towards a more conservative up to the 25%. The feds have always talked about a 2-month reserve. That really is discussing working capital because you have highs and lows of income. And so you need to have that ability for cash flow purposes. On top of that, stuff happens. And so that's why you need, in my view, and in the committee's view, a little bit higher reserve rather than just the pure working capital reserve. So we heartily endorse this. We think it's going to give the administration the flexibility that they need because a lot of this is a balance between the revenues and the expenses, the immediacy. And so we think that I'm going to call it not really a compromise, but it's just a meeting of the values between the 16 and 2/3 and the 25% is appropriate. And we heartily endorse that. We voraciously went through that discussion. So hopefully that will carry.
All right, thank you, Richard. Bill, any questions?
No question.
No questions. Richard touched on mine a little bit. The rationale for that 25% was always cash flow. Any concerns as we move forward that we're not going to be able to meet that need as if we adjust downwards? Obviously, we can flex as need be, but any concerns about?
No, and I would say that should this policy be adopted, that our current plan and the budget that we bring forward, especially since it'll be the first time that we're doing a biennium budget, would be to keep that 25% reserve.
Very good. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? None? Anyone online, Gwen? All right, bringing it back up here for action. Have a motion.
I move.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Gwen, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriana, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes.
I would like to thank Nita. Every policy she brings so far is short, concise, and understandable by, I think, anybody. You go back and read, well, most of our policies weren't policies, they were procedures, but it was complex and this is a very simple statement of reserves, why you have them and what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, and there'll be more policies to come.
Good, we look forward to it, actually. Thank you. With that, we move on to council-initiated business. Is there any council-initiated business tonight?
I have some.
Mr. Larson?
Yes, you mentioned the fact that I can ask that on the next meeting, that a resolution be drawn up, actually rescinding resolution 2022-113. Censure should be rescinded, apologies issued, and in those apologies, the new resolutions state that the recitations were not true and not accurate. And as far as committee assignments are concerned, if Holly does not want her committee assignments, I'm certainly willing to take them.
All right, is there any other member of the council who wishes to request that that item be put on the agenda?
I think that we ought to consider it. I think we need to revisit it and talk about it. And I don't know a ton of the backstory, but I think that now that I'm on the council, that maybe we should talk about it more. However, that needs to happen.
Anyone else? Consensus of the council?
I have no idea.
Your mic down, your mic. Your microphone.
Microphone.
I have no problem with the reissue or restatement of the item, bring it before the council again for discussion. No, I don't know what the resolution should look like, but if you feel that we need to readdress that resolution, I don't have any problem bringing it up again.
So just so the city attorney and I are really clear on direction, Councilmember Lauritsen's request was very specific. And so looking over at Christine, but I think
So my read on this, let me see if I can help you out. My read on this is the council is not supportive of all the add-ons that Mr. Lawrenson brought forward, that we are willing to take another look at censure, standalone.
Rescinding censure.
the actual resolution that was passed. Okay. We'll put it on.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Any other council initiated businesses? We move on to information items.
I have an information item.
Go ahead.
I want to thank the council for taking notice of the Titan missile site. For a while there, I thought I was the only person who was actually looking into it. You know, I toured the site. I've listened to all the complaints. It's my district, by the way. So, yeah, I want to thank you guys for actually looking into it. I mean, actually agreeing to look into it because I thought I was the only one.
No, we've been looking at it for years.
Yeah.
And while it is encompassed by your district, it is county land. So it
It's
is
county
not
land, but it's right next to Sun City, which is my district.
understood.
And people have complained about it.
Any other information items from the council? Any from staff?
No, well, yes. The city attorney and I, and the chief and our public works director have been meeting, putting together what we're kind of calling a proof of concept for a sort of the nucleus, the egg of some type of program to address homelessness on a real level. Or a better way to put it is on a level that we haven't in the past. And so provided that we can work through a few of the details here in the next week or two, our plan is to come back next meeting and we're going to try to get some information out to the community so they're aware and float some of these ideas through the city council to see whether there's interest in perhaps funding them and working on them. And not in a pressure-filled manner where you feel like you're forced to make a decision. This is sort of organic in the sense that we've come up with a creative idea we'd like to run by the city council.
Actually, Mayor, I do have one more business item before we adjourn. I'm perfectly fine bringing back the item of censure, but I would like to have a discussion or talk about the conduct policy that we've been talking about, because I don't feel like I should be subjected to aggressive behavior, pointing at me, calling me names, and everybody sits here and lets him do it.
You're pretty aggressive, Holly. You were just aggressive about this.
Excuse me.
Okay, I've had it.
Bill,
I've had it.
enough,
Okay,
enough.
all right.
Okay, you're right. You should not be subjected to that.
Right. Also,
Should be subject to it.
I shouldn't be subjected to this. It's not on the agenda. It, can or will be on the agenda.
Why don't we just adjourn?
So,
Yeah.
Why don't we just adjourn and then?
because right now, Bill, I'm the one running the meeting. You are not.
I understand.
So-
Maybe I should be running it. I don't know.
Maybe you should, but you're not at the moment. This
If you don't,
is,
if you don't want to run it, I'll run it.
I'll tell you what.
If she doesn't want to be on a committee, I'll be on a committee.
If you
no,
want
you
this,
can't have my committees.
if you want this council to reconsider censure, we may actually, if you keep talking, in 30 seconds, reconsider. This is exactly the behavior that has
Well-
been stringing us along. We can't really talk about this on.
No, I think we can talk about it.
Right now, I know
I've
we
been subject
can't.
to a lot of bad.
It's not
media.
on the agenda, so
Well,
we're
it's not on
done.
the agenda, you know, so it
We're
violates
done.
the Brown
We're
Act.
done. It is the Brown
Oh,
Act.
my.
All right. Wow.
Just to be clear on the issue of the Brown Act, when you bring up items such as council initiated business, there is the opportunity for limited discussion. There is not a lot of great guidance on what limited discussion constitutes, but certainly enough discussion so that council can make a decision as to whether the item should be put forth on a future agenda.
So Holly, since you backed us up to council initiated business, I'm going to add a minor one that I think you'll all agree to. I'd like to add a item to the agenda of city manager's report to give him the opportunity to have a slot where he can report out on, for instance, any of the items that came up from the public that you're following up on, anything like that.
That'd be good.
I think that'd be a good place to report.
I very much appreciate that. So I don't interrupt when you're doing your comments.
Consensus on that? Yes. With that, we now stand adjourned. Thank you all for sitting through a lively discussion.